Hello, my name is Alexei, and I am in the amazing city of Nagasaki. This video is, however, not about Nagasaki, but about a lost place in the sea some 19 kilometers from Nagasaki harbor. It is the abandoned island Gunkanjima, or the Battleship Island. Lost place, or modern ruins, are ruins of architecture from the recent past, usually in the most recent century, or since the 19th century. Man-made architecture that is abandoned or no longer accessible to the general public. Structures abandoned through the process of urban decay. I can't call myself an urban explorer, but lost places fascinate me photographically and cinematically. The atmosphere of lostness and decay can be fascinating and spine-chilling at the same time, reminding us about the former times, people, and about the transience of life. But I digress. Gunkanjima, or the Battleship Island, is not just a lost place, but a whole lost island. Its actual name is Hashima, and it was a coal mine in the sea until abandoned in 1974. Since Gunkanjima is open for tours since 2009 with many hundreds visitors per day, it is not a lost place anymore, but rather a lost and found place. There are several tours from Nagasaki running to Gunkanjima. However, you won't see too much of the island, since there are only 3 observation areas close to each other where the guides will lead you to. Here, here, and here. All the rest is closed to tourists due to safety aspects. The safety first aspect, so important to Japanese, explains also why the island was reopened only 35 years after being abandoned. After all, you just can't let such a ghost ship of an island lie there uncommercialized. It is a cultural asset, and UNESCO increased its commercial value by approving this island as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2015 as a part of Japan's sites of Japan's Meiji Industrial Revolution. According to my tour guide, the decisive factor for the approval as a World Heritage Site was the stone seawall surrounding the island, which by now should be almost 100 years old. The island's popularity as a tourist destination was also increased in recent years by several films, among others the James Bond film Skyfall. In the film, parts of Gunkanjima are used as a location for the deserted hideout of the villain Raoul Silva, where James Bond and yet another ill-fated Bond girl are brought. Such a shame that you cannot enter this apartment plaza as Daniel Craig and other film crew members did. Let us return to the history of Gunkanjima. Coal was first discovered on the island around 1810, and the island was continuously inhabited from 1887 to 1974 as a seabed coal mining facility. Mitsubishi Company acquired the island in 1890 and started mining coal from under the sea while the land was expanded and the seawall was constructed. Around 1910, the island looked like this. Today, it has almost a tripled size, expanded 6 times, as this graphic shows. Hashima got its nickname Gunkanjima, or the Battleship Island, after it was compared to the battleship Tosa. And indeed, thanks to its distinctive profile shape, Hashima really does look like a battleship. To extract coal, 4 main mine shafts were built, with one actually connecting it to a neighboring island. The mine shafts went down up to 1 kilometer. Between 1891 and 1974, around 15.7 million tons of coal were excavated in mines with temperatures reaching up to 30 or even 40 degrees and 95% humidity. These were not tough but excruciating conditions. You can imagine the life expectancy of the miners of that time, working in such heat and humidity and inhaling coal dust, not to mention the ever-present danger of gas explosions. If we think how tough the work was for the native Japanese coal miners, how was it for the forced laborers? Before and during World War II, Gunkanjima, like many industrial sites in Japan, was a location for forced labor. Korean and Chinese prisoners of war were kept here, enduring varying degrees of hardship. They were subjected to heat and humidity, with very little to eat, and beatings if they slacked. According to local records, 122 Koreans and 15 Chinese died on the island between 1925 and 1945. However, the actual number of deaths may be higher, as there is another record stating that more than 1,000 forced laborers died on the island by the end of World War II. Whether official or unofficial record, this aspect of Gunkanjima's history will be quite probably omitted in the guided tour. At least in my tour, there was no such mentioning. By the way, when Japan requested in 2009 to include Gunkanjima along with the 22 other industrial sites in the UNESCO World Heritage Site list, it was initially opposed by South Korea, exactly because Korean and Chinese forced laborers were used on the island before and during World War II. In the end, Japan and South Korea reached an agreement that Japan would include the use of forced labor in the explanation of facilities in relevant sites. And so Gunkanjima became a UNESCO World Heritage Site. However, did Japan keep its promise? Well, at least not on my tour. A monitoring mechanism for the implementation of the measures to remember the victims was set up by the World Heritage Committee, and it was assessed during the World Heritage Committee session in 2018. In this meeting, the UNESCO Committee concluded that Japan's progress to implement appropriate measures to commemorate the victims and acknowledge the full history of the island was unsatisfactory, and requested Japan to keep their promises. Coming back to Gunkanjima, in 1916, Mitsubishi Company built Japan's first large reinforced concrete building, a 7-floor apartment block, to accommodate their increasing number of workers. Concrete was specifically used to protect against typhoon destruction. Over the next 55 years, more buildings were constructed, such as apartment blocks, a school, kindergarten, hospital, town hall, and a community center. For the islanders' entertainment, a clubhouse, cinema, public bath, swimming pool, rooftop gardens, shops, and even a pachinko parlor were built. By the way, electricity and fresh water were an issue, at least for some time. A generator providing electricity on the island sufficed at the beginning, but quite soon it could not cover the needs of the population. For this reason, in 1918, undersea electricity cables were laid from the neighboring Takashima Island. Fresh water was first distilled from seawater and later brought by the water supply ships. It was stored in an elevated water tank, and understandably, water had to be rationed. Boiled seawater was used for baths. Fresh water was only used for rinsing off the body after leaving the bath. In 1957, an undersea water supply pipe was laid between Hashima and Sanwa town of Nagasaki Prefecture, ending the water rationing on the island. However, with the exception of some management residences, baths were not installed at homes, so public baths were further used instead. Space was always an issue on Gunkanjima. As there was no space to plant anything, the islanders cooperated to carry soil to the roofs of the apartment buildings, where they grew flowers and vegetables. These are thought to have been the first vegetable rooftop gardens in Japan. In 1959, the island's population reached its peak of 5,259, with a population density 9 times larger than that of Tokyo at the time. Can you imagine more than 5,000 people on an island measuring 480 meters from north to south and 160 meters from east to west? Well, hardly, unless you pile on this small island so many multi-story buildings as possible. It must have been a tight community where privacy was yet another deficiency. And so people mined coal and lived on Gunkanjima, happily or not, but provided the circumstances with a relatively normal life, with hospital, school, shops, restaurants, pachinko and other civilization achievements. But the times were changing. Oil started replacing coal in Japan in the 1960s, and coal mines began shutting down across the country. Gunkanjima's mines were no exception. Mitsubishi officially closed the mine in January 1974, and the island was cleared of inhabitants in April the same year. The island was abandoned completely, to be rediscovered 35 years later. A battleship wreck, a ghost ship with decaying buildings as if after a war. As I have already said, you will have access only to 3 observation areas on Gunkanjima, but I still would recommend any tour there in case you travel to Nagasaki. I combined my tour with a visit to the Gunkanjima Digital Museum, which provided lots of additional and interesting information. Mind you, however, that the tours will be in Japanese only, although the tour operators might distribute leaflets in English. For all others not being able or not planning to see Gunkanjima with their own eyes in the near future, I hope that you are satisfied with my short virtual tour. If you have enjoyed this video, please like, comment and share. And as usual, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you.